aspect of me? And the answer to that's actually really simple. It's not a rocket science kind of answer. It's a really simple answer. And the answer is this. He wants you to be a disciple. Now, what that entails, apparently, is a little bit more confusing to be a disciple. What does it mean to be a disciple? That's the next question is typically asked. Well, what science would call a case study, God has given us. As you read through the Bible, there are many, many, many wonderful things that you will read about in what would be called a case study. You get to examine their lives, and you get to see what it's like, how they lived their life, what they did that makes them stand out and be great. Now, we've already looked at Abraham, and we looked at Gideon. And we saw that these two men, they had some troubles. They weren't perfect. But throughout all their trials, throughout all their struggles, throughout everything that they did, that they had, throughout everything that you read, they always believed God and they trusted God. And today we're going to turn our attention to Daniel. Now, when you meet Daniel, you're actually meeting a couple hundred people. But only 4 of them are given a name. And the name is Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. We're only given 4 names out of what would be hundreds of people. And we'll get to that in a minute as to why. When we're introduced to these, they're approximately 15 years old. So they're young. Just like many people could be young in faith, they're young in age. Just like some people in here are young in age. And I'm grateful. And when you're young, or in age, you just don't know a lot about the world. I hate to break this to you young guys. You just don't know a lot. I don't know a lot either, but I fall in that category. But, so you don't know a lot. The world's always changing. It's always moving. And regular new experiences present themselves on a daily basis. And that's where we are. Now, a little bit more backstory about where Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are, as well as some trends. In the time frame that we're reading here, the phone rings. Babylon was just invaded by the king, or not Babylon. Babylon just invaded Judah. King Nebuchadnezzar comes in, he kills the king of Judah, right? He leaves the temple and all that, but he decides that he's going to take some of the noble and royal young men and make them servants in the Babylonian king's palace. That's where we are. Now, what's Babylon like? This is an artist's rendition of Babylon. It's a beautiful city. They take them from Judah, they take them all the way to Babylon. Now, Babylon is interesting because Babylon has every kind of material attraction and temptation that one could imagine. It's considered the greatest city in the world. In the middle of the desert, it's shining. You got blue rocks, you got gold borders and golden animals, and this is a picture of what an artist drew based off what archaeologists found. It's actually a pretty picture. The next picture is a picture of the actual wall. They're still there. Wow, beautiful city. It was kind of like taking all these kids and dropping them off in New York City or Las Vegas. Everything that any child could ever want would be there. And the purpose of all this was to break down their Hebrew culture, their Hebrew heritage, and to rebuild them as Babylonians. So they were going to be taught how to be Babylonian. They were going to learn how to walk Babylonian, talk Babylonian, think, dress, eat, everything Babylonian, and forget all the Hebrew. Right? Now, part of their training allowed them to get food from the royal table. And the food that they were going to be given was considered unclean by Hebrew standards. The Jewish law said the food was unclean. So Daniel had a decision to make. He thought about it. He said, I could eat this food, this unclean food, because probably everyone else is eating it. Or I can resist. Now, why would everyone else be eating the food instead of resisting? Because if you didn't obey the rules that were set before you in Babylon, you were punished. And that punishment was typically execution. So as you can imagine, you have all these young 15-year-olds, and they're being hauled away, far away from mom and dad, far away from everything they know, and they're being told that you're going to eat this food, and you're going to become everything that it means to be a Babylonian, or you're going to die. Now, we only know 4 names. Now, I venture a guess for that would be because the majority of those who were taken into captivity probably said, Mom and Dad will never know. I'll probably never see them again. I'm going to eat food. And they're lost in time. They're forgotten. And life is like that. Life is like that. We remember our heroes. Those men and women of character that have the courage to stand up for their faith, what they believe in, their convictions, their names stand the test of time. All the other people fade away. And that's what we see here. So what decision did Daniel make? Chapter 1, verse 5 tells us that the king assigned them the daily food from his wine and his table. And Daniel decided in verse 8, Daniel resolved that he was not going to defile himself with the food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. Daniel's not being defiant to the king of Babylon. He's being faithful to the only king that matters, and that's God. That was his decision. But see, Daniel didn't come at it just as, I'm going to be defiant. Daniel came at it and he said, look, don't make me defile myself in this way. Instead, how about this? In verse 12 and 13, he says, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. And then compare our appearance with that of young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. And the chief official agreed to this. What harm did 10 days really do? In 10 days, you might look a bit skinny, but it's not going to be enough to get the chief official executed. So he said, you know what, I'll agree to that. A 10-day test. Now, what was this a test of? It was a test of their appearance. Vegetarians can live a very long, healthy life. I'm not going to argue that with anybody. However, a meat eater and a vegetarian look vastly different. Meat eaters, they would be nice and plump and fat. The vegetarian would not be. So it was a test of appearance. Could God maintain our appearance to where we didn't look any different than all these other guys, even though we're only eating vegetables and drinking water? They put their faith in God to the test. And whenever they were tested at the end of the 10 days, verse 15 tells us, at the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. They looked better than all the others. They looked healthier than all the others. They stood out above all the others, and they had trusted God. Now, because they trusted God to take care of them, we're told in verse 17 that to these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning because they trusted God, because they were willing to stand out on a limb, if you will, and literally put their lives to test. God gave them what they needed. And what they needed was all kinds of looking all right, looking healthy, and not stand out. And God gave them the knowledge of literature and learning because they were willing to trust in the Lord. We'll leave it this one. So God helped them pass all their examinations all the way through, all the way up, because they were willing to trust the Lord. They were willing to stand out, and He did that. And in the process, they moved up. They were eventually placed above all the other people, and they were given prominence in all of Babylon. They were placed in positions that were important, right? Because they trusted God. And Eventually, Daniel even stood out even above them. Daniel was trusted even farther. You learn in chapter 2 that he was able to interpret a dream. And because of that he was placed in a position in the royal court. And then eventually, Daniel was sent away on business. And when Daniel was sent away on business in chapter 3, things changed a little bit. See, now we're no longer talking about Daniel, we're talking about his 3 friends, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. And what happens while Daniel is gone is the king gets big headed. The king goes a little bit egotistical. You see, he decides that he's going to have a golden image of himself built. And that when all the music plays, everyone's going to have to bow down and worship the image. So now not only do all the people in Babylon have to worship all the many gods there in Babylon, which I'm sure are a lot, they've got to worship a golden image of the king. So sure enough, there it is. The music plays, and here this egotistical guy is standing there gawking at all the Babylonian people, bowing down and worshiping him. And then some astronomers, these are the devil's tools at the moment, they come up and they say, hey, Almighty King, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. You're absolutely amazing. But there are some Jews whom you set over the affairs of the province of Babylon who pay no attention to you. They neither serve your gods or worship the statue that you have set up. Now, how about that? Here you got some stubborn Jews and some pesky astronomers, and they're raining all over the king's parade. See, the punishment for not abiding by this rule is to be thrown into a blazing furnace. So the king, he's mad. He's irate. And he says, you bring me these 3. And they bring them to him. And they say, look, if you worship me right now, I'll let you live. But if you don't, I'm going to throw you into a furnace. And his arrogance, what he says is this. He says, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? It's a pretty arrogant thing to say. But he's a pagan god. He doesn't really believe in anything. He's just a pagan king. But you see, the Proverbs, the 3rd proverb tells us that God mocks the mockers. And he gives grace to those who humble themselves before him. And I love what the Jews respond to him and say when he says, why God's going to save you from my hand. They reply to him, they say, King Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. They said, we don't need to defend you. We don't need to defend ourselves from you. God is our judge. Our God is able to save us from it if he wants to, but he just may not. There's 2 responses. There's 2 responses that they gave. They say, one, God is able to save us. And the second response is, but he may choose not to. But either way, even in the face of death, they were going to serve God. And they weren't going to violate their beliefs. So as you can imagine, the king just gets absolutely furious. He has them bound up and thrown in the furnace. But the furnace is so hot that the soldiers that take them to the top to throw them in, they die from the heat. The flames coming out the top of the furnace are enough to kill the soldiers who threw them in there. So here we have 3 Jews. They're in the furnace. They've been faithful, and the king is absolutely amazed by what he sees. The king leaps to his feet in amazement and asks the advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? And they all respond. They say, yeah, there was 3 men. He says, but look, I see 4 men walking around. They're unbound, they're unharmed, and the 4th is like the Son of God. king all of a sudden he sees them. There's 4 people. They threw 3 in, but there's 4 standing in there. So he realizes what it is. It's like the Son of God. And he runs up to the furnace. He runs up and he calls them by their Babylonian names. He says, servants of the Most High God, come out here. And come out. And they came out of the fire. They came out of the furnace. But not only did they come out of the furnace, they came out in perfect condition. Their hair wasn't charred. Their clothes didn't smell like fire. Everything was wonderful about them. God saves, he saves perfectly. When God saved them, he saved them perfectly from a fire. When God saves us, he saves us perfectly too. They had no evidence of the furnace on them. When God saves us, there's no evidence of sin on us either. But it's what happened next that is really, really awesome. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These were the Babylonian names, who sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Take 2 things away from what he said. First, the king was impressed by their courage and God's power. And second, these men were willing to put their faith in God's hand. They were willing to die for what they believed in. See, in America, the ambulance just got me. In America, we don't have to worry about dying for our faith. It doesn't happen here. But around the world, that's just not the case. Around the world, people are dying for their faith on a regular basis. They were willing to die for their faith. People all around America, or all around the world, are willing to die for their faith. And you learn something really easy from that. Until you're willing to die for your faith, you can't really live for your faith. When you're willing to die for your faith, there's nothing that will stop you. And that's where they were. That's where Daniel was. That's where Mishael was. That's where Hananiah was. That's where Azariah was. They were willing to die for their faith. And because they were willing to die for their faith, God took the courageous stand for them. Now in chapter 6 of the book of Daniel, we read the familiar account of when Daniel gets thrown into a lion's den. I think everybody's kind of familiar with that one. Well, if you're not, we're going to go over it. So Daniel is very prominent now. The Babylonian Empire has fallen, but Daniel, once again, proved himself to stand above everybody else. And he's in the Median Persian Empire. And he's still serving. And he's prominent. He's rising up. And some of the local guys, some of the local Median guys, they were a bit angry with this. How can we get rid of Daniel? So they took note. They realized that Daniel prays 3 times a day. He's always praying to God. So they decide, hey, what if we convince the king here to issue a decree that you can't pray to any god for 30 days? And anybody who violates that gets thrown into the lion's den. So they go and they tell the king that, and the king says, that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, let's do that. So he issues a decree. You pray to any god for 30 days, you're thrown into the lion's den. Daniel hears this. And what does Daniel do? Daniel doesn't skip a beat. He doesn't hesitate. He has no sign of cowardice. He walks right upstairs to the 2nd floor. He opens the window that faces Jerusalem. He gets down on his knees and he humbles himself before the Lord. And he prays. And they run and they tell the king. They say, oh, king, he's praying. And the verse up on the screen, Daniel chapter 6, verse 14, tells us something very interesting. The king was greatly distressed. He wasn't distressed that Daniel was doing this. He was distressed because he realized what it meant he would have to do. And he tried to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown, but Daniel continually went back and prayed. So the king had to obey his decree. He had to obey his decree, and he says, okay, I'm going to throw him in the lion's den. That's what I've got to do. So as he's walking him up to the lion's den, he goes and he tells Daniel, he says, look, may your God, whom you continually rescue. This is a pagan king. And he tells him that. He says, may the God whom you serve continually rescue you. He had lived his life. Daniel lived his life in such a way that people took notice of how he lived his life. He lived his life to serve God. That was his life. And he lived it, and the king and all those around him noticed the goodness in Daniel. And this pagan king even respected him for it. The way Daniel lived his life led King Nebuchadnezzar to follow God. And the way he lives his life is eventually going to lead this king to follow God. So the king, he puts him in the tomb. He seals the tomb with his seal, whatever seal it was. I don't know how the Babylonians sealed the lion's den. And he goes back to his room. And when he goes back to his room, he can't eat anything. He can't drink anything. He doesn't want any entertainment. He tries to go to bed, but he can't sleep at all. He's really distraught about this whole thing. He had to send Daniel, a guy he trusts, a guy he loves, a guy who he has immense respect for. He had to send him to a lion's den over this decree. And in the morning, he rushes back. And as he's running up to the lion's den, he actually shouts out, Daniel, servant of the living God. See, the king already knows the truth. That's what I take from that. As he's running up, he's already calling to Daniel. He's asking, are you all right? And sure enough, he says, servant of the living God. He already calls God the living God. He's well on his way. So Daniel responds. Daniel says, yeah, I'm fine. God sent an angel down to me, and the angel shut the lion's mouth. And the king was amazed. The king was absolutely amazed by the signs and wonders by what he had seen. And he too issues a decree. He issues a decree in Daniel chapter 6, verses 26 and 27. He says, for he is a living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. And he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lion. Daniel's life, his courage, his willingness to take a stand impacted the entire known world at that moment. The Medes and the Persians, they were in charge of everything. There was a decree issued saying that that was the one God. How you live your life is a testimony. And in fact, your testimony, how you live your life, says more than your words ever will. It'll reach more people. And even when you're not around, when you're not doing anything near people, your testimony is reaching people. So I've got to ask you a question. Are you being like Daniel? Are you willing to take a stand for something? Faith is scary. It takes courage, and Daniel's that perfect example of courageous faith. What in your life should you be taking a stand for that for some reason you're hesitant about? We've all got something. How is your testimony? Are you living your life your way? Or are you living life his way? There's a whole lot that you can learn from the book of Daniel, from the life of Daniel. The most important thing that I want you to take away from this today is that Daniel had courage, and he courageously faced everything that came to him, but he wasn't alone. He had people with him, and we know their names too. I don't want to forget to mention them because they're equally as important. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah all had the courage and we remember their name, is your name going to be remembered after you're gone? That's the question. You pray. Father God, I just want to lift up Dale right now.